Welcome to the party.
Welcome to the party, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. My name's Steve Tarleton, and I am the creative director here at Northview Church. And with me, as always, is Pastor C.J. Johnson,
am I here?
Senior Pastor. You're center there if you want to talk to people.
Okay.
Yeah. Brian's cutting cameras all around. You can look wherever you want. You can look over your shoulder.
We should probably have, at a minimum, a GoPro view of Ryan in the lab.
Oh my gosh! As you can tell, we are without our handler this week. Aubrey is not here.
Shout out to Obs.
So this could just go off the rails pretty easily.
Yeah, I think we already have started there.
We've already been like 2 or 3 places that is actually a really fun conversation.
I'm always so nervous. And to watch it back and be like, oh, dear Jesus, what did I say? I don't process through the filter of, hey, this has to be perfect,
Right.
in terms of a performance.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like, hey, let's have the discussion, and I think this stuff is awesome.
Yeah, people are getting more of a raw view of your mind, and I think honestly, that's one of the beauties, because on the weekend, like we've talked about it many times, you've got a limited amount of time, so you're trying to package everything as concisely as possible, make it palatable, and hey, can we fit this in the amount of time with all this information? But when you're processing all these things, and even our discussion that we're just having, there's a lot of I'm forgetting the word right now, but a lot of details that could change based on somebody's question to you about that. Like they could come and ask you a question about what you preached this weekend, and you're like, oh, you know what? I hadn't thought of that, but I do have, I have a response to that. But on stage, it's kind of a one-way conversation. You're just kind of pouring out what God put in you. So this is a chance in the podcast to just really, tease those out a little bit more. But before we go down too much of a rabbit hole there, welcome to the party. What was your highlight reel from this last couple of weeks? We actually, you had a couple of weeks of basketball tournaments, and then we had Pastor Steve Poe last week, and so you had a couple weeks to, build up a bunch of highlights. What's been going on?
Well, the weekend, Pastor Aaron spoke, which shout out to Aaron, did a great job. Riley's team played Saturday morning in semi-state. Had they won, we would have played that evening.
Yeah.
For the final championship. So I went into the weekend planning, hey, I'm going to film on Thursday for Saturday night.
Yeah.
So I don't have to miss Riley's game, but I'm still wanting to preach on the weekend.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I write my message and come in on Thursday, and what it is required, it takes to do it in terms of staff members and equipment and cameras and switchers and sound and lighting. It's the stuff people don't think about. It's a whole schedule that people. Yeah. So they give you hey, there's a kind of almost like a production window.
Yeah.
And so I come in, and I make 2 attempts at it, and both times got interrupted, different things. But the first one was hilarious. I don't know how far into it I was, maybe 15, 20 minutes, maybe. I don't know. Long enough to settle into my message.
Yeah.
And something came crashing down. Do you know who it was?
I think it was Emily. Walking backstage.
Oh, that is so funny. Shout out to Yikes. But yeah, something came crashing down. So I was like, all right, I'll do it again. But the headspace, you have to quickly pivot and be like, oh my goodness. I was 20 minutes into a thought.
Yeah. Well, and then also, I mean, you're doing this to an empty room, which is, I know for you is like you want to actually have some engagement. You want some feedback from people, and I know one of the things I appreciate you say a lot is you know that sermon is for somebody, and you like to have that person there in front of you, like. I'm preaching this to you.
Yeah.
And so when there's an empty room, that it's definitely hard to get that feeling for sure.
Oh, yeah, especially if you're a staff member and it's like, dear God, you're one of the 6 people that pastor's going to be aiming this at. Well, that can feel a certain way too.
Yeah.
So I totally feel that. I can't fake it at all. So nonetheless, I make a second attempt at it, and then a couple individuals came walking into the auditorium, didn't see the signs that we were recording outside. So we missed our window.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Aaron, I call Aaron, I'm like, hey, what are the chances, you have a message on Jacob?
Yeah.
And so I asked, him, but my thing was I'm like, well, here's the deal. I love Aaron to death. He's doing great with family ministries. If I'm going to give him Saturday, I should just give him the weekend.
Right.
And so I'm glad I did, because I thought he did a bang up job. Yeah. Well, in terms of your statements, hey, so you had a couple weeks off. Well, it didn't feel like a full week off in terms of, just sermon prep and even just passion to pour into the church. And so coming into this weekend, I feel like my heart was like overflowing a little bit.
Yeah.
So I felt like today's Peter, or this weekend's Peter message, was Peter with a hint of Jacob.
Well, okay. Yeah. Some overflow from the previous week. Yeah. Man. Well, before we really dive into Peter, though, like sum up your basketball season with your daughter. I know you were you had like a fun time, like getting to experience, and she started rocking out, like playing some great ball.
Yes, we laid an egg at semi-state. I would say yes. We got outcoached and we got outplayed.
Oh man!
Sometimes you just got to take it on the chin. They forced us to play their pace athletically. They shouldn't have been able to even stay on the same court as us, but they did. They slammed on the brakes from the very beginning, and it worked. So, nonetheless, full ownership of the loss. We shouldn't have lost. But have you ever? Go look this up. This is a true fact. Sports data. Go watch the film. Have you ever seen a game where the team that won only made 6 field goals?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
No.
Someone was like, hey, they came out. I didn't even realize that was the case throughout the game until someone asked.
That really happened.
Hey, do you realize they only made 6 field? I was like, well, where else did all their points come from?
Right.
80% of the team's points came at the foul line.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So the end foul count, someone said, was 36-11.
Wow.
So think about that. In girls' high school basketball, 4 quarters.
Yeah.
Once there's 5 fouls, you are in the bonus, and it's immediate 2-shot double bonus.
Yeah.
Well, at 36 fouls, they were in the double bonus all 4 quarters.
9 fouls per quarter.
We were not in the double bonus once. Think about that. In addition to that, 2 of our best players, Riley being one of them, fouled out with 5 minutes to go left in the 4th quarter.
Yeah.
And then our other players, so if you were to look at like the 3-headed monster, Riley, Elise, and Trinity, this Trinity girl leads the state almost in rebounds, especially for our class. Elise, I mean, is a bucket, a great scorer. Riley fouls out, Trinity fouls out, and then Elise gets hurt.
Oh, man.
So, yeah, it didn't work out for us, but nonetheless, it was lopsided referee. What? Yes.
Had to say it. So going from that, we're into Nothing But Net. Just a really fun series. I saw, I think it was on our YouTube page, or maybe it was on Instagram, just somebody saying, this is their favorite series of the year. They love getting into March Madness. I know you were saying that this weekend. Talk a little bit. I think we always explain it, but just the idea of Nothing But Net. Some people are like, well, what does that even mean? Is that just March Madness? Is that why do you say that?
Yeah. One, this week as I started out, I was making some jokes about the tournament.
Yeah.
Which is a dream come true. Seeing a church-wide tournament like that was so fun. And I didn't realize that when I was making whatever statements I did at the beginning, I talked about the tournament and I said how in the championship it was Westfield versus Fishers, and I said, and there was this girl who was getting buckets for Westfield that I found myself cheering for Westfield.
Oh, that's funny. Were they thinking high school tournament?
No.
Oh, what?
No, they were thinking of the church tournament.
Okay. Yeah.
And they said, but I didn't go on to clarify who won.
Oh.
And so during service, apparently the entire Fishers campus starts booing me.
Oh.
Because they're like, hey, we won. You didn't make it clear to everybody who won. And then I immediately followed it up with the announcement of Carmel High School beating Fishers.
Oh my goodness. You're dumping on Fishers this weekend. Oh.
Jeff Seagrave, a buddy of mine, reaches out. And he was like, dude, you should have heard it. He said it was so funny. He said people were heckling you. So shout out to Fishers. Thank you for the grace. And yes, you are the official year one Nothing But Net Northview tournament champion.
You hear that, Fishers? We're acknowledging your championship.
You know what?
You did a great
on behalf
job.
of Nothing But Net as a staple, we should get him a trophy.
Oh man,
we should have Joe Smith cut down some nets.
Oh man, good. Well, it was so much fun to watch. Like I think a tournament like that, not something that you get to do that often in church, where you're just like, hey, we're just gonna have a tournament between all of our campuses. All the campuses showed up, showed out. Specifically, I think we were all like, Flora came down and they balled.
Yes, I wasn't surprised by that though.
Yeah,
there's plenty of hoopers in Flora. They are just low-key farm boys who, just hang out. Even some girls who can play ball. Like, that high school is well represented at our Flora campus.
Yeah.
A lot of, great student athletes. Dave's son, I mean, there's multiple videos of him online, dunking.
Really?
All sorts of ways. Yeah, he can fly. So,
man.
I was betting on Flora, but then when I seen Westfield had a team.
Yeah, they did.
But all that to be said, I didn't really get to see Fisher, so I didn't know who was on that team.
They did everything right. I think when I watched Fishers play, they were doing everything right. They worked well as a team, and I'm sure none of these teams had any practices, so they just kind of came together.
That's not true. That's funny that you say that. I do know that people were low-key practicing, but what I will say
they're
is
out there getting ready for the church
Fishers
tournament.
play, but there's no question they had to be really good.
Yeah.
Because the teams that they had to beat, Flora, Brookside, Westfield, that's cool. We should totally do a trophy. I also think, and we should figure out a way to solicit for feedback. Would people do this?
Yeah.
We should do a co-ed, Nothing But Net volleyball tournament.
Oh, yeah.
And we should do it in the next couple weeks.
Yeah. I bet we have some good volleyball players here.
I bet people would come out. Yeah. I thought the thing that was most enjoyable was seeing how the overlap of campuses.
Yeah.
And how people got to like bump into one another, but to do so in that space, people loved it.
Yeah.
And excuse me, that's where it was a dream come true.
Yeah, and we're such a big church that there's not a lot of opportunities when we all get together. Like we're so spread out. Like we've got people, obviously all the way out in Florida and stuff like that. There's not a lot of opportunities that we get to have the church together for something like this.
Did you see the Brookside jerseys?
No, I didn't.
Man, I told Pastor Charles, which shout out to Brookside, Pastor Charles, which, hey, we should say, I was asking him, hey, update me on some things, in the ministry down there, specifically in the Brookside community.
Yeah.
And he was saying that pre-COVID, I forget his numbers.
Yeah.
But where the church's donations were in terms of groceries, pre-COVID versus post-COVID, and how that community is becoming a food desert.
Oh yeah,
and they're just limited.
Yeah,
in terms of food. So that was new information to me. I'm so thankful that I heard that. So I don't know how we need to do a better job of just keeping that in front of our people, that those bags that are always available at all of our campuses every single week. Somehow they're being missed right now, but my goodness, it wouldn't take much for a lot of us to just throw some groceries together every single week and even once a month to take care of our church family in the Brookside community. So
yeah, the white bags are out in the lobby. People can grab those. And also, I mean, honestly, Brookside's not that far away. There's a lot of serving opportunities down there. Talk to Rick Glassley, talk to Pastor Charles or something like that, and get plugged in.
100%.
Because it's a cool place to be. Like if you haven't had a chance to go down to our Brookside campus, it's a cool place to be.
Yeah, it's where before the new Union Chapel, we filmed a lot of videos is at our Brookside campus. Well, nonetheless, they showed up with their own unis.
Yeah.
Like custom Brookside uniforms, which I had been thinking, man, next year it would be cool for each campus to have its own sub-brand.
Just let them all
come swagged out, sell out to your campus, because it was cool to see the different campuses represented. So I'm for it. So
yeah, Carmel campus, Joe Smith came out as I think Bobby Knight or something like that. He's got the white
wig,
hair.
outfit, everything.
Yeah, he didn't throw a chair across the floor, but maybe next year. I just want to jump into kind of recapping this weekend, our Monday morning quarterback section. This weekend we were talking about Peter. Peter's just, it's just fun to talk about. Like he is so diverse in his experience in the Bible, and I love the angle that you took at it this weekend. What sort of things about Peter, as you just even looking at what you didn't say this weekend, because you probably could have said a million things about Peter.
Oh,
like that conversation could have gone on. We probably could have done a month just on Peter. Yeah. What sort of things are you like, man? There's this aspect of him that I wish I could talk more about.
Well, he's significant. If you think Christ, the cornerstone, the three strongest pillars, Paul, John, right? Writer of Revelation, Gospel of John, other letters, Peter. So he's significant. He is a towering figure in God's story. He's the leader of the disciples, the first among equals, the authoritative mouthpiece of the group. He at times was held in check by Paul, and at times he held Paul in check. And he did the same for John. So you have to have a high regard for Peter. To be quite frank, this is actually where the Catholics do.
Yeah.
That's definitely rooted in their appreciation and devotion to the Pope. So,
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I love his whole story. Walking on Water is one of my all-time favorite stories. Peter's calling. He lays down the catch of a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to say yes. It's so bold. It's so decisive. I felt, you know, so I referenced 1 Peter chapter 1 this weekend, and the whole time I kept thinking, oh my goodness, I'm going to lob myself into this letter that I don't have any time to set up the letter.
Right, yeah.
And anyone who knows how kind of my mind works when I come into a message, I just feel shallow sometimes, cherry picking Bible verses. You know, you trying to figure out how to come into this stuff when you only have one weekend to talk about Peter is difficult. But I would say one thing that I find myself doing is I will look at the whole book. So 1 Peter being the example. And I will think, how would I lay this out in a series?
Yeah.
And I wrote this out. This might be a good framework for somebody. If I were to lay out 1 Peter in a series, maybe I come back and do this. Week 1 would be identity in Christ. Week 2 would be hope in the midst of suffering. Week 3 would be holiness in everyday life. Week 4 would be Jesus as the model for endurance. Week 5 would be living as exiles in the world. Week 6 would be witness through character. And week 7 would be future glory. Now, if I say I'm going to write a message on Peter, and the first among only 2 letters that this mighty man writes, and I only get 40 minutes to summarize Peter's letter.
Sure, yeah.
And I lay it out over those 7 points. Well, how much time? I get 5 minutes per point.
Yeah.
Right? You start to realize the substance that's there. So I think that's a big one. I think a strong appreciation for Peter in terms of just who he was.
Yeah.
The other one is, you know, Peter obviously was the anchor in the Jewish community.
Right.
Paul really is the one called to the Gentiles. So Peter is cast sometimes into a category that he's fully not. Peter at times is seen doing remarkable things when it comes to ministering to the Gentiles.
Yeah.
Cornelius being the prime example, where Peter has the dream, you know, the unclean revelation. He goes to Cornelius's home and he's saved, and his whole alibi is, I didn't do it, God did it.
Yeah.
What I love about that is you discover the difference between a person's theology and their ministry.
Yeah.
You know, and Peter goes to Cornelius's house and he has a theology of what he believes, but he's unsure of how that's going to play out in terms of ministry. And what's interesting is in the gospel sometimes you see, and this is really a Hebrew way of thinking in terms of a Greek way of thinking. Hebrew way of thinking is they act their way into thinking. A Greek way of thinking is they think their way into acting.
Yeah.
Everything's reasoned out. Well, most of us are approaching faith and our participation in God's work from the standpoint of, I need a theology to inform my ministry.
Right.
Right? Once I have an equation, once I have some formula of how to apply this, once I have this theology, then I'll like participate.
Yeah.
I'll have a ministry. It's the opposite. That what you discover is ministry precedes and produces theology. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Here maybe be like a really stretch the idea out. The idea again is ministry precedes and produces theology, not the reverse. It's not, hey, once you have all these explanations, once you have all these theories and equations and formulas, from this theology, you'll have this ministry. You know, it is from this ministry that you'll have this theology. That's a different way of thinking.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, that's what you see in Peter. Peter goes and he ministers to Cornelius, and through that ministry produces a theology.
Yeah.
There are things that he discovers about God that he didn't know to be true.
Sure. Yeah.
Until he stepped into the ministry assignment and was like, oh my goodness, God loves the Gentiles.
Yeah.
Peter, how can you boldly declare and give your life declaring the message that the good news, the gospel of Jesus Christ, is available to all people, Jew and Gentile? How can you do that? Because I seen it.
Yeah. Yeah.
My theology is the byproduct of my experience, right? Well, why is that important? Again, you can stretch it out, and you could ask in terms of all things theology, how do we have any theology? From the beginning.
Right.
Well, think about it. Like, from the beginning, we have this redemptive story in Adam and Eve, the fall, and God's tender mercy and bent towards redemption.
Yeah.
Immediately. And it is God's ministry to humanity in the Old Testament that produces a theology. Right? You see how does God minister to the Israelites?
Yeah.
How does God minister to Abraham and the patriarchs? And what you start to realize is it is his ministry to those people that produced the theology for those people.
Yeah.
Ministry is preceding and producing theology. I know I'm not going to do it justice. It's too big of a maybe conversation for one podcast. The point would be there are a lot of ministry opportunities that are being forfeited because people are assuming I can't step out and participate in that ministry.
Right.
Because I don't have this theology.
Yeah.
And I would say, no, the step of faith is sometimes accepting that it is when you step out into that place of ministry that God begins to sharpen your theology.
Yeah.
And that's a Hebrew act your way into thinking kind of way.
Yeah.
And otherwise, what happens is you will dwarf your development as a believer, and you will settle for a very claustrophobic version of God's work and will for your life.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times you can fall into a trap of thinking that the ministry that you're called to or a part of is for the other people. And like, I'm here just to serve them. And I think what we see, especially, in Peter's life and things like that, is like what he was called into. Well, it was a two-way street. It was for them, but it's also for him. Like with Cornelius, like he had to be convinced. God had to convince him to go. He had to give him a vision and say, hey, and how many times did the sheet come down? Was it 3 times or something like that? Is like, hey, go ahead and eat. It's fine. He's like, no, I've never done anything unclean. Never done anything unclean.
Yeah.
He's like, no, rise and eat. You're like, no, I've never. And finally he's like, okay, I'm going to go. And that's when the men showed up, and he had to be convinced to do it. But then as he gets into it, then like you're saying, it did develop his theology. And this is maybe a whole other spin-off of this, but one of the things you said this weekend was, when you're talking to Kristen about it, that she said he's the most relatable guy. And he remained relatable through the whole thing, because even when he's a pillar of the church, like you were just saying, Paul called him down on his hypocrisy of who he was hanging out with or who he would hang out with. And in that moment with Cornelius, he had to be convinced that you can go to the Gentiles, you can talk to them. They need the message as much as you did. And he continued to be kind of that relatable guy. He even though he's writing, these great theological statements in 1 Peter, at the same time, he's the same guy that Paul's like, hey, you're wrong about this. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about just the relatability of Peter, because he was a pillar of the church, but like at every turn, when you think about his story versus his theology, his story is a story of like, oops.
Yeah.
But then God still stayed with him and developed him throughout the whole time.
I think I'll answer that specifically through the filter of like a young adult.
Yeah.
Here's where I think the next generation in this season is going to find Peter extremely relatable. Right? I could tell you ways that I find. I mean,
Yeah.
I shared with them a lot of them this weekend. All the times he got it wrong, I'm like, dude, I totally relate to that. How he clumsily stumbled into this.
Yeah.
Yeah. How the guy who puts his foot in his mouth is a mouthpiece.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I can talk for days about how I relate to him, but where I think the next generation is going to relate to him, and what is also rooted in the conversation we just came out of, a fairly dense one about ministry and theology, is for the modern, postmodern, for the modern thinker, the person who everything is built in like facts.
Right. Certainty.
Right? And certainty and explanation. I think there's a lot of good in those things. The more postmodern, which is whether you like it or not, way of thinking of the next generation, is they're less concerned with facts than they are with feelings. They are less concerned with something making sense as much as they want it to be sensual.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It's they could care less about the explanation and more about the experience.
Yeah.
Right? Whether we like that or not. Where the modern thinker, though, wanted things to be very natural and controllable. The postmodern thinker is very open to the supernatural. So you start to see some openness where you wonder with each generation, how is God going to do it? He's not going to give up on our kids when we're gone.
Right.
He's not going to give up on our grandchildren and the generation. He's going to carry forward. How's he going to do it? And I think one of the ways he's going to do it is because he is a God who provides explanations through experiences. Right? So again, ministry and theology, it is an experience ministry that produces an explanation theology. Well, how is he going to capture the hearts of the next generation? Well, guys like Peter can relate to the next generation because he too needed proof. He too needed to experience for himself. And so he went to Cornelius's house because he had to have the encounter firsthand. The same reason why he went to the tomb. He had to have the encounter firsthand. And Peter represents the person who is okay wandering into an uncertain experience, all to develop a greater understanding and explanation. So the next generation, I think, will find him really relatable in that regards, because you look at all the studies and research, and there's no question that's how they're wired and that's how they're thinking. Yeah. And somehow here in Scripture is this towering figure who they can relate to.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely kind of puts you in a place of, as you're pastoring, a big church, as you're pastoring any church, really, like one of the things we want to encourage people is to get connected and get in proximity to the things that are happening. Get in proximity in ministry. Get in proximity to to worship and to discipleship and all those things. We have life groups. We have a million ways to do it at the church. Oftentimes, there's kind of a trap of people sometimes just come to the church on the weekend for that hour long, and I mean, we could kind of dump on people for doing something like that, but it's true. Like a lot of people, that's their only connection to hearing the word, worshiping, being discipled. But getting in proximity to ministry and serving in some way is really going to take your faith to the next level, And I think you kind of see that in Peter. Is just like he said yes. When Jesus came, you talked about the big catch. Yeah. Like he left that behind so that he could be in proximity to Jesus and keep going.
It's interesting. There comes a point where there's the infamous rich young ruler. Who runs up to Christ. And think about this. He's the only other individual, technically the 13th disciple, who has extended the invitation. Hey, lay it all down and follow me. Yeah. Christ tells him, you want to follow me? Like, sure. Here's what it requires. And he walks away with his head held down. Think about what that guy forfeited. Mm-hmm. A front row seat. He could have been we don't even know the guy's name, the rich young ruler.
Right, yeah.
But he could have been a Peter, a John. It's wild to think about that moment. But most people, they read that moment and they identify with the rich young ruler walking away because they can't commit to the standard.
Yeah.
And so they feel bad for the rich young ruler. Well, here's the problem. Peter and guys like Matthew, the tax collector, fly in the face of people looking to be justified through the filter of that victimhood. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. That basically, how would I say it? What Jesus has to spell out for the rich young ruler, he doesn't have to spell out for Peter and Matthew.
Sure, yeah.
Peter lays everything down and chases after him. Matthew, at the tax collector's booth, generating great personal wealth, lays it all down and goes after Jesus. Peter and Matthew are rich young rulers in their own right.
Sure.
Right? They can make some proud claims. They have businesses. They are providing for families. So what you see Matthew and what you see Peter do in terms of answering the call and surrendering it all, you see the rich young ruler getting hung up on.
Yeah.
right?
Ouch. Yeah.
Yeah. And so for the person who is empathizing for the rich young ruler, like, oh, me too.
Right.
Well, they're going to be challenged by a Peter.
Right.
They're going to be challenged even when we get to Matthew about, well, but there are certain people in our story who they don't walk away from an opportunity. They don't miss a moment when God puts it in front of them. Yeah. People like Peter lay it all down.
Yeah.
That was some of the emphasis this weekend on just playing with effort and giving it your best.
Right. Did you have a sticky statement about that? And I'm gonna butcher it if you did, but like clunky following, like actually getting in and doing it is better than trying to get it perfect, but like not jumping in right away. Like if you just kind of if you're stumbling along, at least you're stumbling along after Christ. You're at least following him. Whereas some of us are like, well, let me get my life together, and then I'll kind of step into it. Like, one of the things that I loved this weekend that you kind of brought it all back to, though, is that Peter's story, as much as it's about Peter and who he was and everything, was about Jesus and Jesus sticking with him.
Yeah.
And you kind of ended there in 1 Peter. Can you kind of summarize those thoughts about, Peter didn't do everything right, but Jesus continued to give him grace and to allow him to learn and grow, maybe not at his own pace, but he definitely had to take a little bit of a circuitous path to get there.
Yeah. Well, in the Gospels, you do develop a perspective on Peter that starts to assume he's dramatic and impulsive and miscalculated, inconsistent. So you have some of the things that make him relatable are negative in nature. Like, yeah, us too.
It's true. Yeah.
We all can identify with those things. Well, when you get to the end of his life where he's living in a time of great pressure and persecution, standing for what he believes, where he's doing it, how he's doing it, is amazing. Again, he was Paul's anchor.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you get to the end, though, and you wonder, but like, what would be some of his closing thoughts? And this guy who has a bit of a reputation for being impulsive and dramatic doesn't appear that way at all.
Right.
Rather, he's resolute. There is a sturdiness to him. And his perspective is really broad.
Yeah.
Grace and peace be yours in abundance. Right?
Yeah.
Whoa. Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. Boom. All right. That's exclamation mark.
Yeah.
In his great mercy, he has given us new birth. Again, it's the salvation clarity that he's providing. He's giving us the language of new birth.
Yeah.
Again, Peter is significant. Why do we talk about being born again?
Peter.
Yeah, like John obviously captures a great conversation with Nicodemus in John chapter 3. But my goodness, 1 Peter also is a great moment where Peter elevates for us. He's given us new birth. This is a new life that we have, right? A living hope through the resurrection. So, he's just so anchored. Well, as he gets going, look at how he gets to the end after just he starting out with like worship. Like, whoa, 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 right?
Yeah.
Abundance, glory, God's great, mercy. He says, in this, in all that we just discussed, you greatly rejoice. Though now, for a little while, you may have had to suffer grief in all kinds of trials. Like, now for a little while. Right? And he gets to the end, and for him, his perspective on stuff doesn't rattle him anymore. Things that used to like kind of stir him up and create commotion, trigger some of that dramatic nature, that impulsive behavior, those things that used to trip him up, they no longer do. He's facing the pressures of a Nero-led empire.
Right.
And he's saying, guys, grace and peace.
Yeah. This is just temporary. This is just temporary.
Though you've had to go through things for a little while.
Yeah.
He says it's all a blessing.
Yeah.
Because these have come so that your faith, of which greater than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire, he's like, it's just making you better. Maybe proved genuine. And yeah, it's like his number one takeaway is rooted in authenticity and sincerity and truthfulness and honesty, that the real Jesus, the historical man Jesus, right? The real Jesus came for the real Peter. The historical man, Peter. The real Jesus, the historical Jesus, came for the real Steve, the historical Steve.
Yeah.
That's the message of the gospel for anyone. You can all insert your name. And he gets to the end and he's saying, you stick with it, and you discover that there's a lot of complexity and a lot of fluff and a lot of things you'll have to navigate, but these pillars you can anchor your life to.
Yeah.
And they'll carry you through whatever trials you face, and you will have, look how he ends. Though you have not seen him, you love him, and even though you do not see him now, you believe in him and are filled with an inexpressible and glorious joy, for you are receiving the goal of your faith. Yeah. I mean, the guy's living in a context where we're not thinking, oh, that sounds like inexpressible, glorious joy. That's what he's blessing these people with. So
I love that even then, somebody who had seen Jesus, he is setting it up for those that didn't.
Yeah,
I love that. He's like, you haven't seen him, but he is certified your faith.
Yeah. What he shows us is, in moments of crisis, in moments of like pressure, the best thing you can do is herald with clarity the simple basics of the faith.
Yeah.
Christ crucified, Christ resurrected, Spirit inflamed, church empowered. Yeah. Hope of glory, right?
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, I feel like, and you said it, we could talk about Peter for a long time.
Yeah.
We're gonna wrap it up there, but talk to us about the next member. Like I was just thinking about it, you're kind of building the basketball team this week of like all the all-stars.
Yeah.
Talk about who we're getting into this coming weekend.
Yeah, I would wonder what people would guess if you were to say, use all the duos, whether it's Mike and Pippen, whether it's Shaq and Kobe, Batman, Robin, whatever.
LeBron and literally 20 or 30 people. I mean, he just has so many sidekicks.
That's funny. when it came to Jesus' team, he needed all 12 players.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Should I say? I don't know. Is that even worth teasing out? We're going to do John.
Yeah.
Yeah. It'll be good. I'm excited. So we'll do Peter and then we'll do John, which is funny. Like you could spend a whole week just talking about the relational dynamics between Peter and John.
Right. Yeah.
And they're like, seems to be a competition there the entire time.
Yeah.
So,
and they are really, from what we see in Scripture, they're the closest in proximity to Jesus. Like they're the ones that they get brought along on everything. They see things that nobody else saw, and then from that, they're communicating to us a lot of like what we were talking about earlier, the theology. They're communicating a lot of that revelation because of what they saw and what they experienced, but like what they legitimately experienced firsthand. They saw the historical Jesus.
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine. Like that's just crazy, man.
Yeah. I could go nuts in funny observations of what that must have been like. Just Jesus's one of his early sermons coming from Peter's boat. It was just a cool thing to think about. The fact that Peter was sitting that close, that early, to the first words being declared.
Yeah.
About the word, from the word. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot for this conversation. It's been awesome. The last hot take I got for you, I heard something, I think this was on ESPN. They're saying that LeBron, for his retirement, should do 1-week contracts with every team in the NBA. Just go through the last season, do a 1-week contract with every team in the NBA. What do you think?
Ugh.
That he just figured that he's played for every team at the end of his career.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll figure out some way to exploit it, because that's the thing. They're getting bored with hey, we should do something because we can, you know. And how do you hold it against the guy? He's a legend. He just keeps. Even now, it's like you look at his numbers and it's like, okay, people want him to quit just because they're bored with him.
Right. Yeah.
But in terms of his numbers and how they stack up across the board against his peers in the league, it's like,
yeah,
there's
nobody like him.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
So the first question is he going to retire? Has he made that clear?
I haven't heard.
So I've not heard that he's retiring soon. So I would not be surprised if the guy pushes it to 45. Like, I don't know. Like, is that something people have ever considered?
Who's longest was it? Karl Malone? Like he went forever. I can't remember who has kind of that endurance record.
And LeBron, I don't know, man. How he's playing, he could probably do that forever, because it's no longer a game built on his athleticism or skill. It's just his strength and mind. Now he's just kind of old man games and picks you apart with how he understands the game. So he could do that forever.
Oh, man. Well, we'll see. Tune in next week when we find out what LeBron's doing.
He should go back to Cleveland.
Yeah,
go finish out in Cleveland, especially because now James Harden got hurt. They make that trade, and they were hot. Like, I mean, they looked like they were going to actually do something in the playoffs.
Yeah,
and then Harden goes down.
Man. Well, thanks for joining us this week for Welcome to the Party. We hope to see you on the weekend at church, and we're just so happy to get this chance. So take care. Have a great week.